We are given so much baggage about running projects right. The reality is project management comes down to complete clarity about the results you need, success criteria that make it clear what you're willing to trade off, then really crisp, regular, continual communication. And it's about being able to see what decisions you need to make, where things stand, and having the systems in place for you to do that.
So when it comes to projects and project management, what are founders and leaders and CEOs frustrated about?
One of the biggest frustrations I hear is you're buried, you're underwater, your head's down, you can't connect, you don't have the free time to do anything other than try to get some deliverable or another unstuck or someone on your team unstuck. You're feeling like you're continually having to pick up the slack for a team member or multiple team members, or they're overwhelmed and you don't want them to be overwhelmed. I've heard from so many leaders in so many different angles, right? There's the kind of nurturer who doesn't want their team members to feel overwhelmed, so they start doing everything themselves. There's the driver whose team is overwhelmed and not delivering the way the driver thinks they should, so the driver is again stepping in and doing it all themselves. There's a lot of other variations, but overall, it's just a lot of intensity, a lot of back and forth of information, and maybe heated exchanges of information through a lot of different channels. You have an email here, you have a Slack thread there, and they're saying that they have it all organized, right? That you say that, oh, I've got this in this project management board and that on my Teams channel or my Slack channel, and we've got these documents, we've got these automations, we've got all these tools and things, therefore we must be productive. You're confusing, in this case, usually output with results, because ultimately you can build the most amazing thing, and yet if the results aren't there, it's not going to produce what you're hoping or maybe intending it will produce. It might produce a lot of other lessons where processes need to improve or where you need to level up leadership and things. But when you have all these things going on, you're delivering projects and those projects aren't really getting the results and therefore the notoriety or the use that you're hoping they will. And then they're not being used as widely as you're hoping they will be.
So then what do they want? What's the ideal for projects and for project management?
You want to be able to wake up in the morning, sipping on your tea or your coffee or whatever your drink of choice is, see just a list of concise updates showing everybody's getting their stuff done. The project is going smoothly. It's outperforming. It's aligned. Everyone's aligned to the actual result, not just an imagined project plan where you invented all the shiitake you were going to deliver, but actual results that your client is loving. You want to see your client coming back to you or your customers coming back to you or your internal stakeholders coming back to you going, holy shiitake, how did you get all this stuff done? This is amazing. This is exactly what we need. You're a hero. And you want that to feel easy where it can actually feel like it's almost wrong because it shouldn't be that easy, right? That's what we really want on a project. There's always going to be a little bit of leaning into it, but when you're really delivering value, the great thing about it is it doesn't have to feel like killing yourself.
And then so what gets in the way, whether it be for founders and leaders or teams, what gets in the way? What are the mistakes and pitfalls when it comes to executing projects and with project management?
There are a few traps I see people get caught in, like real mistakes, and it's not anybody's fault. It's what the industry has really pushed and marketed heavily. A lot of it comes from old 1900s ideas about planning, very old school project planning that was done as a financial budgeting exercise, like in the first part of the last century, started producing all these things like Henry Gant's famous Gantt chart, started producing these really detailed plans where the detail is what was valued because going into all the details in the planning was seen as offsetting risk. If you thought through it in this much detail, you must have thought through it, so we've got lower risk. The problem with those plans is you end up having to commit to them, and the unspoken risk is you don't know what's going to happen in the future, especially right now. The level of uncertainty and the pace of change has been accelerating exponentially throughout the 1900s and into the 2000s. So using these planning techniques from way back in the last century, it really holds you back. And the way that you know you're doing that is if you've got a really complex Gantt chart, right? You've got really complex project dependencies. You've got all these planning tools where even if it's labeled agile, it's really just a set of pre-planned things that you're working on for the next 12 weeks, 6 months, or even the next 6 weeks is really a long time. So over indexing on planning is a real mistake. The other problem is task tools in general. The task tools that are out there, I'm not going to name names, but virtually every modern project management system, their core atomic unit is more work. Like their whole job is to get you to enter more work. That's what task means. So they're a work management system, but they're designed and they're geared for you to enter more and more stuff. And as you enter all that stuff, it can feel cathartic when you first get it out, but then you're not driven to any sort of decision about what to do about it or how to prioritize it. The number one reason execution fails, strategy execution in particular, is unclear values and conflicting priorities. So when you're creating these cascades, these massive plans and all these different tasks, you start to create conflicting priorities. That gets in the way of execution. And even if you put all those conflicting priorities into, or deconflicted priorities into a fancy project management system, at the end of the day, if you're not clear about the result you're trying to get and measuring that against the result, and that result isn't measurable and tangible, you're just inflating your costs. You may be feeling great about it. Your oxytocin and your dopamine may be triggered by all the cool tools you're using, but at the end of the day, you're just doing more work. And that is the mistake, right? I think is the biggest mistake is a true result focus. Naming the result in very clear terms. Instead of indexing on planning, what you really need to do is become very clear about the result you need to get. What are our success criteria? How are we measuring success? How will we adapt if our beliefs aren't tracking with our original plans? And I find that a lot of very skilled, very driven, very capable professionals dig themselves into a hole because they just assume that's known. They are very accustomed, especially those of us who are engineers, we're very accustomed to taking 4, 5, 6, 7 steps in our head and making it automatic. The problem is when we apply that to something as large as a project effort, we may be heading in a direction that is near the destination, but it happens to drive us off a cliff. And we just haven't bothered to take a step back and really get clear about our exact coordinates for success. Every step you take is work. And you could think of every step you take as a task. And the mindset I'm saying that traps a lot of people is one of, let's stop talking about where we're going, let's just go. Which sounds good, right? That sounds like the right thing to do. The problem is if you don't have a way to navigate and you don't have a destination, you've no idea where you're going to end up. The big idea is it's far too easy to start a project with a lot of tasks that has you doing a lot of work. Stephen Covey used to tell the story of the guys building a highway in the jungle, and they're trying to reach a particular city, and they're making great progress. And one of the foremen climbs up to the top of a tree to look around, see how everything's doing. And then he yells down, everybody stop, right now, stop everything you're doing. And the guys from down there working on the road, their heads down, they got plenty to do. They want to get this done. They're working hard. They don't want to stop. I says, no, stop. The guys finally look up. Why do you want us to stop? Why we're making such great progress? He says, you're making great progress that way. City's that way. Like that is what most project management is. And the problem is, since it's not tangible that we're landing on some city often, It's so easy to just deliver something and not know where you are relative to your destination. So in order to get clarity on where you're going, you have to get clarity on the result, right? You have to have clear criteria for success that you can check off, that limit subjectivity, that are measurable if possible. And if you can do that, you'll be successful. So the model that we have is, for any given project, how will we know we were successful? What boxes will we be able to check? What can we do then once we have that in place? What can we do to make progress visible and visual so we understand, are we making progress? Is that progress in the right direction? And then we need to create rhythms of execution so that we're checking in on a regular basis, daily and weekly, to course correct. On a daily basis, everybody has to be clear about what they've accomplished and the one thing they're going to work on next, so we know that it's aligned to plan. And on a weekly basis, we need to address the issues that come up, because some of those may be our planning assumptions were wrong. I was looking at one of the best project management tools out there, and what this team does, they just do a good job from a product perspective. I love the work they do. I really do. What they don't do, very notably, is give you a way to deconflict. And that gets underestimated. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I see people make. Like, we assume that the priority is clear and obvious. And we assume that everybody sees what we see in terms of importance. And so we don't communicate. We don't take the time to take things out of our head and make them visual and visible and make the actual decisions. Instead, we just come up with all these task lists and these deadlines, and we make the whole game about, did we check the boxes in the beautifully glorified spreadsheet we set up? And sometimes that's enough, but most of the time it's not, especially in a volatile, changing, uncertain environment, and like the one we live in. What I've seen again and again, you can actually have a team in almost no time at all run circles around everyone else, even better resourced, more highly trained teams. You can run circles around them if you just focus on these things. Clarity of results with clear success criteria, a daily rhythm of providing concise updates in a very specific format, a weekly rhythm of steering and making sure you're addressing issues, assumptions that change, learnings that change, and then having things visible where everyone can see them, and they've got visual tools that allow them to see what decisions need to be made. Then those visual tools help them make those decisions so that they're not getting caught in the trap of the conflicting priorities or the work hamster wheel. One of my old clients told me he felt like all of these different task systems and project systems were just a machine gun of work, just hitting you with all these different things to do, this and that task, without ever giving you the chance to go, wait, is there a better way for me to deliver value? Can I get the result here without having to be micromanaged into this task? So get off that task hamster wheel and get your project oriented around results. Hey guys, if this was interesting, make sure you like and share this with someone else who could use the information. Subscribe to our channel. We drop videos like this every single week to help leaders like you level up their business and grow profitably. That's it for this episode. We'll see you next time.